Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Doug Lean. I'm manager for the Economic Development Department for the City of Auburn, and we welcome you to another program in our series that we are creating for business assistance to our local and expanding companies here in the Auburn area. Today's subject matter is on technology and your business. We hope you will learn new technology information that's available and maybe some old information you're not aware of and how you can apply that to your daily business decisions and activity. Today the program has been developed and is going to be presented by CenturyLink, one of our corporate partners and a very large telecom supplier to our region and our businesses, and we look forward to hearing their expertise in this field and give you some help. At this time, I'd like to introduce Sue Anderson. She is Vice President and General Manager for CenturyLink here in our region, and her opening comments. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Doug. Hi, I am Sue Anderson, Vice President, General Manager of the Seattle market here in the Puget Sound region, and we're very glad to be here today. We have both CenturyLink and Savis, and we're going to give you some information around cloud computing and around social media, and hoping that will maybe open up some questions and some interest and some thoughts about how you might be able to move forward with that in your own businesses. For cloud computing, we're going to discuss what is it, the trends, who's using it, is it right for you, and a migration to the cloud. And for social networking, we're going to discuss the trends and the business use of social media. I just wanted to take a minute and really kind of introduce CenturyLink. About a year or so ago, CenturyLink and Quest merged together. Those of you not familiar with the CenturyLink name, CenturyLink primarily was a rural telephone company. Quest had the majority of the metro markets, and now collectively together we are the third largest telecommunication company in the United States. We are a technology company. We're dedicating money to investing in our broadband network and really getting the broadband and fiber out there as far as we can. Our customers will see that as we bring this merger and company together that we really have the breadth of products and services to serve all of our customers from residential up to high-end businesses. We're going to be investing about $80 million into our broadband network over the next 5 years, and we're really making that effort to upgrade our network and upgrade the products and services that we have for all of our business customers. I'd like to introduce the CenturyLink and Savis team members that are here with me today. So Meg Andrews is our Market Development Manager. She's going to be talking to us about the social networking piece. Bill McLeod is our Director of Marketing at Savis. Savis is our hosting and cloud computing portion of CenturyLink, and Jack Wilson leads our sales team for Savis. So I'm going to turn it over to Bill and Jack and let them talk to us about cloud computing. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Jack Wilson, and thanks for allowing us the opportunity to come in and speak with you today. As was mentioned, we are actually part of the CenturyLink family, but we are on the cloud side of the house, and the name of our division is actually Savis. So not to get you confused, we are one company, but we are still in that acquisition phase. We were acquired about a year ago. So first of all, we're going to talk about a little bit of the agenda. Welcome to the cloud, introduction to the cloud, cloud growth and numbers, where do we go from here, and finding the right partner. So before we talk about the future of the cloud, I think it's really important to tell you just a little bit, and I did this actually on the airplane because I thought it would be interesting. As we're talking about the future of the cloud and everybody is talking about the cloud, what does the cloud mean? How do we get here? And what does the cloud mean to each different person in the room? You could be a small business owner. You could be in IT. You could be a developer. You could be an individual, such as myself, that I back up my iTunes to the iCloud. So I'm actually a cloud user as an individual. The cloud's going to mean something to everyone in this room. So hopefully the presentation that we give today gives a little bit more clarity about what specific piece of the cloud can benefit you and your business. So before we get into that, though, let me just give you the official Wikipedia term, if you don't know, kind of how we got the name of the cloud. the term cloud is a metaphor used for the internet, based on the cloud drawings used in the past to represent the telephone network and later to depict the internet and computer network diagrams as an abstract of the underlying infrastructure it represents. That's it. So if you remember in the days when you would have those drawings, the network drawings, and it was all in the cloud, that's how the term cloud actually got coined. So as we're moving forward, you know, this term cloud is actually just a term, but we're going to talk exactly what does that mean today. So cloud computing. Everything that you see here is actually the applications that are in the cloud. And some people in the room today may have some of these applications in the cloud. It's more about, though, how you get to that. You could be actually using the cloud from your iPhone, from your tablet, from your desktop, from the servers. So that's the communication layer into the cloud. But as you can see inside the cloud, you've got the content, your database, your network, your backup storage. So that is actually what we're talking about when we're talking about the cloud. And we're going to talk more about how we're going to enable you to be able to use all the things that are inside of the cloud.
So, as Jack said, the cloud really has great benefits across multiple different kinds of people. If you are a business owner, if you are an IT person inside of a small or large business, if you are developing applications yourself, kind of what I'll say standard software or cloud-based software applications, like things you would have on an Android or an iPhone, the cloud means different things to each one of you. And we're hoping that you'll be able to kind of pull this apart and see what can be applied to you in your everyday life. This is a little more of a technical explanation of what the cloud is, but we're trying to apply it to some companies hopefully you recognize and you'll see, oh, I didn't know they did that, and so now I understand what the cloud means to them. So there's three key as-a-service approaches that you'll hear. The cloud's all about as a service, right? You don't own the hardware, you don't own the systems and all that, you just use things as a service. Three main services: infrastructure as a service, a platform as a service, and software as a service. Infrastructure is just what it sounds like. It's raw computing power. So just like you plug in a lamp to a plug in the wall and you expect electricity to come and light that lamp, when you plug into a cloud infrastructure, that is like raw computing power that you can now use. You can put your own applications on there, you can do other things on there, but you don't have to buy the computing power yourself, you just use it as a service. Platform as a service is one step up from that, and that's really mainly used for application developers. So if someone wants to develop an application, let's say a Java application or something on .NET, if they're a Windows developer, they could either go out and buy an infrastructure as a service offering from someone and go lay Java on top of that or lay .NET on top of that and have to manage all that themselves and then do their coding, or they could just go to a platform as a service provider that's already got Java built into that infrastructure, and they just buy that as a utility service as well. The top layer is the one you're probably going to be most familiar with, and that's software as a service. That's really a finished application, and I've got some good examples up here for you. So infrastructure as a service, people like us provide infrastructure as a service. Verizon, AT&T do. The two ones that you might see on the screen here that don't do telephony plus infrastructure are Rackspace and Amazon. Amazon's kind of the market leader. They have been in this the longest. They really kick-started the industry in a big way and have done a really good job. They have amazing products, and they're very deep technically, so they're kind of the market thought leader. But there's lots of providers out there. And what you've seen here is, if you look at the arrows, you see that CenturyLink bought Savvis recently, and that Verizon bought a company called Terramark that's also a market leader recently. So all these telecom firms already had data centers. We had hosting facilities, co-location facilities, but these other companies had built cloud computing services themselves without the network. So because we own the network, we bought them, and they're now in our network, and we think that's a really strong value prop. So that's how the market's already consolidating there. On platform as a service, you may not be as familiar with these folks because, again, they're more aimed at developers, people who are building applications themselves. So Windows has their own kind of platform as a service offering called Azure, where they stick .NET on top of an infrastructure as a service offering. Google has their own platform as well because they're trying to get people to develop on their own platform. So if you think about the Google Apps or the Google Marketplace where people can develop apps there, that's what they're trying to encourage. Hopefully the ones that you most recognize are here at the software as a service layer. You see Salesforce.com, they were one of the first pure, what we call SaaS companies, where previously if you wanted to have a Salesforce automation system, you bought Oracle or you bought Siebel, which meant lots of CDs. You buy servers, put that software on servers in your business, and then you load all these clients, all your Salesforce PCs with clients, and they communicate that way. Salesforce turned that around, and they said, we're going to put it all in the cloud, and all your salespeople have to do is subscribe to that. We'll sign them all up, and you can customize that any way you want, but you just pay on a per month, per user basis. Gmail is another one, Yahoo Mail. If you think about that, if you have your own Gmail account, you're using software as a service right now, because all those servers are in Google's data centers, and instead of you having to load software on your machine and update it and keep track of it, you just plug right into the internet and Gmail is right there. Intuit is another big one. Who here uses TurboTax Online? I use it every year. It's great. It's a great example. Think about what they do. Every year they keep your data, so they know your prior year data. They keep all your Social Security numbers and all those other things. So you just log back in and you say, I want to use it this year, and you pick what level of service you want. Do you just want federal? Do you want state? Where do you live? And they know all the laws behind it. They keep updating that thing, and you don't have to download any more software, right? You just plug in and use it. And they keep all the prior year records, like your loss carry forwards, which I have a few, so it's nice that I don't have to recalculate that. They just keep track of all that. So that's the beauty of software as a service, is that you're truly just plugging into that. They take care of all of that for you. Any questions on this? Does everybody kind of understand that piece? Great. So the federal government, of course, has created an official definition of cloud computing with a couple of layers to it. And we agree with this largely because it captures all the main use cases across all that stuff I just talked about. The key thing on here are the essential characteristics. If you think about this, it's an on-demand self-service, just like I talked about with Salesforce.com or Gmail, or even infrastructure as a service. Once you sign up with those companies, some of them you can sign up with a credit card and start using computing power just immediately. Right? So that's on-demand, broad network access. It's available basically anywhere the internet is available because it's all based on internet technologies. And it's resource pooling. You'll hear the term multi-tenant, which means you and all your neighbors are using the same servers for Gmail or for TurboTax Online or something like that. That makes it economical enough for the provider to give you that service at that price. It's measured, so you can do it on a per-person basis or a per-hour basis. You can get very granular in how you pay for that service. And it's very elastic, which means it can grow quickly. So if you sign up for Salesforce and you have a 50-person sales team, let's say, and you sign up 5 people for it just to test it out, and they really like it, you can go sign the other 45 up for it, and the only delay is how long it takes you to enter it into their webpage. There's no buying of more servers. There's no more loading software anywhere. It's just sign them up and they're ready to go. So that's the elastic part. That's a big departure from what I'll call old enterprise applications. The service models we just talked about, infrastructure, platform, and software as a service. And here's some terms you may have heard of, the different kinds of clouds. Public cloud, hybrid cloud, private cloud as well. There's a few key differences here. They all use resource pooling. They all are accessed by the internet, but there's a few key differences. Public cloud, anyone can access, and it's very multi-tenant. You can be next to another small business or a huge Fortune 500 business. Whoever's using those servers, you're right next to them there. On a private cloud, that is when a company basically buys their own set of servers, puts virtualization technology on that, and then allocates that within their own company. So nobody else can get to it except them. But they do use cloud technology to help simplify provisioning of servers and things like that, and we'll get into that in a couple of minutes. But it really is only for that particular enterprise. Now that kind of defeats some of the purpose here of having broad access and resource pooling across multiple entities and all that. But that's because they have gone through an evaluation that I'll talk about in a minute, and they've determined that they like some of the benefits of cloud technology, but they can't handle some of the other pieces of it, like broad network access, et cetera. We'll get to that. And hybrid clouds are what you might think they are. They're a little bit of both. Some people have some workloads on a public cloud somewhere, and they have some of their workloads back in their data center, back in a private cloud, and they mix them in a certain way depending on their security, compliance needs, and things like that. You hear a lot about private, merging toward hybrid, merging toward public, but the net trend is things will really, except with very few exceptions, really go toward the public cloud because it's so economical that all these benefits are kind of hard to ignore for what everybody needs, and we'll get into why people need these things. So I'm going to play a short video for you here that talks more in terms of what a customer might enjoy, the benefits you might enjoy from using cloud technologies. So I just gave you the technical version, now I'm going to give you the business version.
Simpler is better. There are any number of things that can stand between you and your business goals. Things that can slow you down and cost you money. Hosting and cloud-based services from CenturyLink are a better way to run your business because they're powerful, simple, and save your business money. But they can do a lot more than that. Responding to fluctuating business demands using traditional IT infrastructure means you might be missing growth opportunities or spending too much on capacity you don't need. What if your infrastructure was flexible enough to align with changing network and customer demands at the pace of your business? What if your IT budget could do more without increasing costs and your IT investments never became obsolete? What if you could depend on reliable security for your infrastructure, along with support for disaster recovery, compliance, and certifications, all from a single integrated service provider? What if you could develop, test, and deliver new services on demand and serve customers without interruption? What if you had help identifying only those parts of your business that would have clear benefits in the cloud? And integrate those services at your own pace, while maintaining control and visibility for the things you're accountable for. You can do all these things and more with hosting and cloud-based services from CenturyLink.
So any questions after viewing that? See how we try to make that more in terms of what mainly an IT or technology person inside of an enterprise would think about. They have a lot of those concerns on their shoulders, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. And we try to help them work through that. So here's some interesting fun facts, we call them, you gathered from different sources to talk about why cloud is exploding. Some will say the cloud creates this kind of explosion. Some people will say this is just the way the world is going, and the cloud is helping to drive costs down and enable more of this. But these are some pretty interesting stats. There are over 10 zettabytes of data created per year. Does anybody know what a zettabyte is? It's 1,000 petabytes. Do you know what a petabyte is? It's 1,000 gigabytes. I'm sorry, 1,000 terabytes. That's right. And a terabyte is 1,000 gigs. So if you think about that, that's how much data is created here, and it's calculus. It's increasing at an increasing rate. It's not flat. And what does that mean? The world's information doubles every 2 years. Now, I didn't say the world's wisdom doubles every 2 years, but at least the information doubles every 2 years. If you think of every cell phone in this room, whenever you do a transaction, you look up a map. When you're responding to an email, when you're getting a notification, that creates data. there's some system somewhere created that data and put it on your phone. That's some of the information that we're talking about here. And somebody in a company somewhere is analyzing that data and acting on that data as well, either in your enterprise or in the enterprise that built the app. So that's all the activity that's going around that data. Cybersecurity, because of all this ubiquitous access, is increasing 10% annually. That's 3 or 4 times, depending on the analyst you look at, what the total IT budgets are growing at every year. So security is still outpacing the need to protect things because people are getting more access to things. The need to protect it is growing as well. These last two ones are really staggering to me. 90 million smartphones in the United States. That's amazing. We're talking approaching the number of cars there were a few years ago. Probably 20, 30 years ago, there probably weren't more than 150 million, maybe 100 million cars active on the road. So now everybody's got these smartphones. And even like Cricket, the folks who do cell phone plans by the month with no contract, they're now selling smartphones. I actually have a friend that works there, and that's what they sell more of than anything, more than the feature phones, even on a monthly no contract basis.
I just read online, too, that the average smartphone that we carry today has more technology than NASA had when they went to the moon the first time. So everything that it took to actually get the astronauts to the moon and back, the average smartphone that we carry today has as much technology as NASA had at their fingertips back then.
And the last one here, that 1 in 8 people in the United States owns some kind of tablet device. And that tablet device, the tablet industry is really about 4 or 5 years old. We've had tablets for a long time, but nobody bought them, really, except a few laboratories. But really, that's taken off. And with it has come, everybody gets Wi-Fi access on that or cellular access, which is just more of that information flying around. So this is just kind of the world we're in, right? So what does that mean for IT leaders, for people who have to deal with all that? They have a lot of forces acting on them right now. If you think about their customers, you think about their salespeople, their internal employees, their partners, everyone has to deal with that kind of access. I could give you an hour on customer service and how that has changed with the cloud, where now you've had customer service reps used to only have to worry about the telephone, and then maybe they had to worry about email. Now they have to worry about live chat and SMS texting and even Twitter. We have folks in our call centers that do nothing but watch Twitter feeds to find where there are problems out there and people are complaining about issues with our service, and they are specifically trained to go out, touch those folks, and take care of them, because it's such a high leverage opportunity. So many people are watching that it's actually a great opportunity for us to improve service and turn things around. So we like it. It's actually good, but nobody would have even considered that 10 years ago. It's a huge change. So and who has to deal with all that? The IT leader. When you think about remote workforces and call centers, you've got people, home-based call centers now. They're using DSL and voice-over IP technology, and they're using remote desktops, things like that. All of that is driving this kind of change. Anywhere and anytime access. And there's some other environmental things too that are beyond just the people part of it. You've got compliance. You've got this ever-increasing cost of IT as a percentage of revenue to handle all this new technology, right? It's how do we give access to more people? How do we look better to our customers and give them more touch points of customer service for more hours of the day? All that drives that. However, there's still an expectation for IT costs to go down. I mean, you read survey after survey, the IT leaders say, I've got to spend more to take care of all this because this is the way business is going, but the business is saying, I thought we were supposed to be getting more efficient. So what happens? IT must become more efficient, right? And we think this is why cloud technology is really taking off, because it's a convergence between the actual technical capability of what cloud computing can do and the environmental factors driving IT leaders today. There's just almost no other way to handle it and keep the margins up in the business and be as agile as you can be. So here are a couple of ways of thinking about the benefits of shifting to the cloud to handle all those factors that we just talked about. On one level, there's an economic level. We talked about the fact that you, in the current way of doing things, you have to buy your own servers, load your own software, manage all of that. Well, with cloud technologies, you can step away from parts of that, and it really changes the economic game quite a bit. On the architecture side, whereas you used to have kind of this closed architecture where you built all your software applications or you bought your software applications, you brought them into your data centers, and only you had to touch those. But now in today's world, when your customer service system has to interface with Twitter, you've got to be able to send emails and log all of these transactions between your customer service reps and these customers. You can't have a closed system anymore. These things have to be able to reach out and touch other applications. Your internal systems aren't cloistered anymore. So the cloud gives you opportunities to tap into all that other technology, all those other applications out there that people are building in the cloud. And from a technology standpoint, again, we talked about how it helps. Cloud enables you to have more of an elastic supply of services for your elastic demand. If you saw in that video how the demand goes up and down over time, that lets you shift your capacity up and down over time, so you don't have to buy a bunch hoping that you never run out of capacity, and you're not shortchanged when you're running short. You basically use what you need because it's sitting there for you. So here again is a more concrete example of how those benefits come to life. So say you're an IT leader in a mid-sized organization, and someone comes to you and they say, okay, we've got this new market we want to go into, and it's going to take us building a new set of applications for a supply chain, let's say, and to go out and sell these services, right? So you're going to have to go and build up more infrastructure because they're bringing on more salespeople, they're bringing on more developers to create the software, more consultants and everybody. So typically what you have to do to build that system is start doing some capacity planning, figuring out what kind of infrastructure you're going to need. Is it the same technology? Is it different technology? Are you going to use the same vendor or not? Lots of planning meetings. Then once you finally decide what all you're going to do, then you got to go and buy it, get it shipped in, test it, and then you finally implement it. Lots of people involved, lots of steps. Meanwhile, the world is spinning. Your boss is asking you, "Hey, I'm hiring these salespeople. We got to get these applications out. What are you going to do?" Now, if you buy cloud computing technology and you get set up that way, suddenly, if that opportunity comes to you as an IT leader, now you've got an infrastructure in place. Now you've just got a lot fewer decisions to make. What kind of applications do we really need on here? Let's make sure this works in the architecture we have, and let's go deploy it on the services that we have. Now suddenly, you're moving a lot faster because you didn't have to worry about that first multi-week process of what kind of gear do we buy, let's go buy it, unpack it, stand it up and test, and finally load our applications on there. It's all sitting there. You basically cut off those first two layers of that previous workflow. And suddenly, the IT manager starts worrying less about what's going on in that data center and do I have enough room in the data center and does it match everything else I've got. And suddenly they're at the table making decisions. They're helping the business grow because, yeah, I can take care of that. We can meet those timelines. And they can start focusing on the important things like, is that the right application? How do we best deploy that to people? What kind of customization do we need? Those are the more fun decisions for most IT leaders to have instead of the, well, I may have to go build out more data center space or go buy some more, or, we're trying to do some consolidation and I don't know if we can do it fast enough. Those kinds of problems start to go away when you start adopting these cloud technologies. Now, Jack really likes this slide. It really brings it down to a real level, and we call it buying versus renting a home. So you can buy or rent the same house. It looks exactly the same, right there on the street. But when you buy the house, does a realtor ever tell you how many trips to Home Depot you're going to need to make to buy the lawnmower and the garden hose, and wow, that shingle is starting to get loose and we may need to bring somebody in to fix that, and yeah, you're getting a note from your homeowners association next year, you need to paint, well, there's $4,000 right there, that kind of stuff. A lot of tools, a lot of upkeep, a lot of maintenance you've got to do. When you rent the home, depending on the contract that you sign, it's all kind of right there for you. And if the plumbing goes bad or the shingle's bad or the paint needs redoing, you just call somebody. It's part of the contract. It's part of what you're paying for every month is that upkeep. And so all you have to do is worry about just enjoying what you've got and using what you've got. Whereas the person who bought the home, they're either climbing that ladder and painting it themselves, or they're hiring somebody to come in and do it at an additional cost on top of what they already thought. So that puts a little more stress on that homeowner, makes them a little more tired. You know, I've spent my share of nights doing things at the house after a long day of work. I felt that. But if you're a homeowner, if you're a renter, and we have some renters in our neighborhood, they stress a lot less about those things.
And let me just, in my defense, I like this slide because cloud computing, it's not as simple as this. I mean, let's face it. But this does actually put a picture, and a picture's worth 1,000 words of really the simplicity and the differences of actually owning your own IT infrastructure. Because when you go out and you buy a server today, you own that piece of equipment, and there's some depreciation that it takes to work that out. And then if that server is full of capacity, what do? You have to go out and buy another server. And the next thing you know, you've got a whole rack of servers that you maybe didn't even anticipate on needing. And then there's the cooling of those servers. It's kind of like a never-ending story. And this slide speaks to me from just the simplicity of what cloud computing is going to bring, not only now, but in the future, because I do think that more people want to rent versus own.
Yep. And one thing we didn't put on this slide was, if your family gets bigger and you need more house, you need more capacity, you have choices. If you own the home, well, you can add on or go through all the pain of selling the house, moving to a bigger one, all the transaction costs and all that. But if you're renting a home, once your contract's up, you just move into a bigger home and start that all over again. And so you can leave a lot of those worries behind. So to Jack's point, this is a really nice illustration that hopefully puts it in real terms for folks. So what are the driving forces? We've got lots of survey data. I'm going to run through some of this pretty quick and just show you what different IT leaders typically and some business leaders think about, why they think they want to go to the cloud, what they're worried about, what's really driving them. So on this side, and we typically agree with this, is that agility and speed should be the main reason why people want to move to cloud technologies. The cost containment element is definitely there. But it shouldn't be the only reason somebody moves to cloud. If you're just trying to save $1, it's very selective on what you do that you will save money and do nothing else. You can do that, but there's other ways to save money. If you don't want to own that server in your data center, you can just lease it from somebody, right? You can put all the risk on them, and you can walk away from it when you're done, things like that. You can cut costs in other ways. Cloud is bigger than just cutting costs. And the people who studied this, you know, these IT leaders who responded to this Gartner survey, I think have figured out, based on their own experience, that agility and speed is a really big factor in that. What worries larger companies about moving to the cloud? It's really interesting. Process, culture, and politics are some of the biggest inhibitors. We've always done it this way. How could we make this change? This is going to hurt. It's going to be painful. There's going to be risk involved. You know, technology is way down the list as the inhibiting factor is a concern. Geez, is that the right technology? That's not the problem at all. I want to change process. You know, the funding and chargeback model. Who's really buying this? When someone comes to me and needs a new division stood up, they need to go build more applications and do new things, I know that I'm going to charge them for those servers and that software and those man hours. But if I'm going to adopt cloud technologies, how do I charge that division back for those expenses, right? So there's some of those things. That's not a terrible problem to have, and of course the cloud market, as you can imagine, us included, have responded to that by creating systems that allow you role-based access to certain things and also chargeback models so that you know how who's using what pieces of your infrastructure. So the market's moving to it to work on many of these problems, but still that cultural piece of it is still there, which is just where we're at in this industry, and we hope that it will change as more and more people adopt and see the benefits. The business reasons we try to back up and say are a little more simple, right? It's about increasing productivity first, and then about decreasing costs. The transparency you get, when we say transparency, that you can take that a couple of ways, but for these purposes, think about what I said before, the ability to go and use more systems that interact with other systems in the world. If you're dealing with customers, you've got to have a good website. You've got to have multiple ways to touch them, not only on the website, but during the order process and after the order process. How do you mix brick and mortar with online? Those kinds of things. You've got to have transparency across those systems and those delivery models to really maximize your lifetime value of that customer, to use a marketing term. Accelerating results, again, speed to market. The little snake chart I showed you, think about how much time, how much faster somebody can get in market and start making money before, as opposed to what they did before. They take weeks and weeks and weeks of spending money to try to build those systems, to try to get in market. Now you can get a lot faster. And then collaboration internally. Again, to go across all those systems, you need to have your employees and your partners talking to each other in a much different way. It's much more than email now, much more than email. And so, actually, Salesforce.com has a really interesting product called Chatter, and it's like a social networking application inside of Salesforce.com, so that their salespeople and the marketing people and the sales ops people can talk to each other in almost in like an instant messaging type of way. They have their own groups and things like that. And so it's a really neat technology. So that's what we're talking about, the business reasons to move to the cloud. So here's some more survey data. What do IT leaders say about this? Interestingly enough, some of them think that saving money is the reason why they should invest, right? The leaders say that. Why does the staff think? They want to be more efficient. When we go and interview people, and we try to build personas. We try to figure out who's buying in these different companies and why. We talk to folks who are like C-level, VP-level IT folks, and we talk to people who are more manager and individual contributor level, and there are big differences in kind of how they think and what they do every day, right? Just based on where they are in the organization and what their responsibilities are. And so this IT staff, these folks really like to help people. They like to solve problems. They want to be felt as useful. I think everybody does in a way, but they're like really problem solvers. They're the tinkerers, right? And so they love being more efficient and working with the latest technology. Improving customer service is really big to them, and it is to their bosses as well. Saving money feels a little bit more like a short-term solution for some of these IT executives, but one of the problems they have, one of the hindrances they have, is security. They're worried about security, and part of that is the industry's fault. We need to do a better job of explaining the differences between what we do for security and what a typical IT enterprise does for security. And there's a lot of survey data out there that says once people get their feet wet and they start using cloud services, a lot of the security concerns really disappear. Once they've been able to evaluate and they move certain workloads over there and they figure out that it is secure, it is reliable, and if they architect it the right way, it really makes a lot of sense. All the benefits, some of these concerns start to fall away. But initially, this is what their big hindrance is: security. What about the staff? What's their biggest concern? Job security. They're worried that they're getting replaced, right? And my previous example talking about not worrying about standing up all those servers and how you find more space and all that, a lot of people do that for a living and they're worried about that. Our answer to that is if you want to keep your skill set current, if you want to be more efficient, learn these technologies. And we're actually providing education for these IT staffers and leaders to learn more about this technology so you can take advantage of it. And suddenly you get out of the business of kind of keeping the hardware running and you get into the business of using the systems and doing more things. So it lets you advance your skill set, advance your career. So it can be a real net positive for a lot of people as well. Any questions on these slides?
Where do those stats come from?
Well, there's a certain set of surveys. This is a group called Management Insight Technologies. We get a lot of survey data from Gartner and Forrester. We publish those things ourselves in some of our material, and we sponsor some of those publications, and they're on our website. You can go download white papers and take a look at those. And we'd be happy to talk to you about, talking to some of those analysts as well. It's great because they get to sit back and do all these surveys and talk to small, medium, and large businesses and really figure out what's going on in there. So they're a big help to us. So some of the concerns in the cloud. I don't want to go through a discussion on the cloud without talking about some of the issues, because there are issues. It's a relatively new technology. There's lots of change involved, and we think that it would be disingenuous to not at least broach these subjects. Some of it's cultural, as you see, like lack of trust and understanding. Not really understanding how this change is going to affect me personally or my business. Some of it's compliance, regulation, some of those external forces, and some of it's just flat-out security. They're not really sure. Is my credit card data safe, or is my customer data safe? Who else is using that server, and how could they get access to my data, things like that. I think the industry is proving itself to really start knocking down a lot of those concerns, especially the security concerns. And we could get into a larger discussion about there's some specific hardware and architecture methods that we use to secure data, but a lot of what it is it's the customer understanding what the capabilities are today and moving the right workloads in there. You'll hear me talk about an all-or-nothing situation. Cloud computing is not an all-or-nothing kind of proposition. You actually, unless you're a brand new business that doesn't have any existing customer databases, no websites, no nothing, you really shouldn't be thinking about going all into the cloud. There's lots of time. There's a migration path that you take, that you should take based on your specific business and what you're doing with it to realize the right benefits against the right risks for you.
Well, and even the analogy that was used earlier, and a couple of hands went up on the individuals that use TurboTax. That's from a security aspect. I mean, you think about the information that you are actually loading into the cloud there, and we certainly trust that, and many people do year after year. And from a security perspective, if it wasn't secure, their business wouldn't be growing the way that it is. And as far as I know, they've never had any security issues with that.
And they're a high-value target. You can imagine the millions of Social Security numbers and other financial data in that cloud. I'm sure people are probing them all the time. So it's proven that you can do that. When we're doing customer interviews, and people say, "Oh, I really don't use the cloud," my favorite question is to ask them, who runs their payroll for them? Oh, it's ADP, or it's Paychecks or somebody like that. It's like, really? So that's a third-party company that has all your employees' critical financial data. That you're in a service bureau environment, and you've been in there for years, and they process your data every month, right? And you pay for it on a per-user basis, right? And they're like, yeah. It's like, well, it kind of sounds like cloud to me. Now, you could argue that ADP servers are off by themselves, but they get to, and the customer inputs all their information over the internet, right? So it is an open system effectively. If there's one opening to the internet, it's an open system. Make no mistake. So when people start, you see the light bulb literally come on, and they're like, wow, okay. And so then they start thinking about other things, and I'm like, and I bet your employees are using Dropbox, storing files, because they don't want to come to you guys and ask for more storage on your servers because it's a cost element. Those kinds of things. That's happening. Are you seeing any data loss there? No, you don't think so? That's when we start having the conversation with them about, if you want to gain more control over that, there's systems you can give your employees that are much more scalable, very cost effective, but keep things more in-house. And so then they start really identifying what's going on. So I'm going to run through a couple of numbers here. These are more fun facts. Forrester is another very large market analyst group, and they do a lot of market sizing in the U.S. and globally, and they talk about the global cloud computing market. Again, this is across the U.S. and all countries, from $40 billion in 2011 to $241 in 2020. So, those are big numbers. But if you think about it, it's a 5x growth. It's going to grow 5 times in about 8 or 9 years. So that's pretty huge growth. And that's how much money enterprises are spending on cloud computing. It's not really like personal, your $25 a year you're spending on iCloud and things like that. This is really just enterprise spending. So, and that is still probably, I think it's going to be about 15% of the total IT market. Think of all the hardware, all the software, all the services that get consumed around the world for IT. Still only 15-20% of it, and it's growing that fast. I mean, that's a big change. Big slide here. Lots of interesting growth numbers. You see IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, like we talked about earlier. They're growing pretty fast, right? They're growing 26% a year, 48% for PaaS because it's really small. But SaaS is the big one, and it's still growing really fast, 16% a year. No economy in the world, I think, is growing at 16% a year right now, right? My favorite part of this slide is the one on the very top. For every 3 workloads created, at least 1 makes it to the public cloud. So if you think about that, for every 3 new applications that get built, for every new company that starts up a customer database, sets up new websites, buys a company, merges them, brings all their storage together, brings all their applications together, 1 out of every 3 of those is going to end up in the public cloud from now on. That's why that growth is so big. 33% of workloads created are going into the cloud. Who's using it? A lot of different industries are using it. Some are using it more than others. We've broken this down by industry and government. So this is a broad set of verticals, and the biggest difference is state, local, and federal government. It's broken out. Some of them are not growing near as fast as the public industry is, but some of them are growing really fast. So you're web serving for websites and things like that, they're growing just as fast as industry is. These applications kind of make sense if you think about it. ERP, or Enterprise Resource Planning software, is kind of some of the most customized, heavy-duty software out there. So it just doesn't lend itself to going into the cloud and being something that's very elastic and easy to sign up for, and you just start using it immediately. Most companies that use that have to customize it to some degree, so it's not growing quite as fast. Still, 1/5 of industries have some kind of ERP application in the cloud. Sales makes a lot of sense. Salesforce.com, we talked about. Marketing, so many websites, so many systems that I'm using with my marketing team are cloud-based. We're not buying software and loading on servers in CenturyLink anymore. We're plugging into these software as a service applications and putting our data in there, and it's interacting with our Salesforce data as well. HR is a big one as well. We use SaaS-based HR software. Interesting is that small and medium companies are growing their cloud usage faster than large businesses are. And you would think, well, doesn't a large enterprise have a lot more data? Shouldn't they be adopting it faster? Couldn't they find cost savings faster and do things like that? And don't they need those efficiencies? Aren't they really caught up in all that process? Well, in some ways they are, that's true, but they also have a lot of that legacy. They also are slower to change. So these small and medium businesses are faster to change. Again, they have smaller databases, or starting up new opportunities, new things really quickly. They're just naturally more agile like that, and they can use those benefits faster. If you've only got 5 salespeople instead of 400 salespeople, it's easier to move them from a disk-based Salesforce automation program over to Salesforce.com. You can do that in an afternoon effectively, maybe a week. Whereas if you had 500 salespeople, you would have to pilot and do some other things just because you're a big organization and it's more complex. So they're a little more risky. As we profile them, they're willing to take a few more risks to move faster because they know they have to. They actually fear being overtaken by competitors. They feel like they need to move faster, and so they're willing to believe these benefits a little more and go after it faster. Let's skip this slide. So, where do we go from here? We've talked about the benefits. We talked about the technology. It's kind of the what of it is. What does it mean to these different businesses? What does it mean to the IT leaders and to business leaders inside of a company? So how do you make decisions? Where do you go? It sounds really great, so let's all leap off the platform, right? We really don't have to do that. And I'm the first one to tell you that it's not an all or nothing proposition. There really is a process you should go through, no matter what size company you are, to to evaluate what the opportunities are. So I'm going to give you a couple of more technical or architecture-based things we should think about, and then I'll give you a much simpler process. So what's your architecture? What are you built on now? Do you have Linux over here and Windows over here, or do you already have some virtualization going? Are you using closed systems or open systems already? You have to think through a little bit of that, what makes sense for you to converge on. What's your security design? If you're a small bank, you probably have some different security, you have a different security posture and different compliance issues than if you're a real estate broker, or if you own a chain of restaurants or something like that. It's just a different deal, right? And compliance reporting goes along with that. End user performance sensitivity is big as well. If, depending on the network that you've got, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, and the systems that you're using, your end users do have different levels of tolerance for slow response time, right? And very typically cloud services speed up response time, but not always. And so you have to think about what your users are specifically looking for, and does that make sense? We talked about data protection, capacity planning, and uptime requirements. Cloud-based systems, you don't all plug them in and they all stay up 100% of the time. They're not all designed like that. Some of them are designed where you have to create the redundancy yourself. Some of them you can check a box and it will create a redundant system for you, but you'll pay for that. You have to think through what the options are there for your business. There's some stages of adoption we've got here. We kind of talk about, are people, we don't know what we don't know. So you start learning about what the options are. You start evaluating. You commit to trials. You commit to testing things. You get into some tactical implementations, and then, depending on, again, on the size of your company and what the opportunities are, it becomes strategic. There's something there where you kind of build what we call a cloud-first mentality. And like when we're building websites, I don't just build a regular website and then think, well, I wonder who's going to use it. We already know that so many people access websites on the phone now, on a tablet or a mobile device. We call it mobile-first design. We think about what the user is going to do, or how they're going to access it, and what they want to do when they're accessing in that way, and we design to that. This is where this becomes just part of your DNA. It's like we have this way of developing things, and it's really, we usually do it in the cloud unless we just can't. That's when you get to that last stage there, when it's really a strategic part of how you run your IT. So my wrap-up slides here giving you a little bit of a evaluation matrix. Again, cloud first here. You think about all the infrastructure it takes to create and run an IT system, and all the opportunities you have here with the different technologies to deliver those systems to your end users, to your employees, to your customers. And what we say is, how do you fit what you need to deliver to what the opportunities are? And so what we say is, we offer that you should take a more radical approach and start the far right, and what can you fully outsource? And if that doesn't work, on kind of starting at the business process outsourcing mode, then you start stepping back into the technology that you need. So for example, if you were, we've got outsourcing HR as an opportunity here. If you are looking at an HR system, you have to think about how you run HR in your business. Do you have dedicated HR people, like a leader and staff that runs that, or do you really not have much of a skeleton crew and you need to improve that? Well, if you do, well, then you have choices. You could hire a firm to do all that for you, or you could build this staff, right? So once you've made that decision, then you think about the technology it takes to do what they need to do for your end users, which are your employees in this example. So could you use something like Salesforce.com, or a more specific example for HR would be Workday. That's a very popular HR system. It's all SaaS-based. Can you use that? Or does that make sense? Well, maybe it doesn't, because you've already got a legacy system that you've customized quite a bit and you've paid for, and has a long life left on it. Well, if that is the right decision, then don't outsource, don't change your systems, just continue to use this. But maybe you could put that on an infrastructure that's more flexible, that you don't necessarily own and have to maintain every day. You can keep that application, just put it in a different piece of infrastructure and start moving it toward hosting or a cloud-based infrastructure system. So that's how you do what you need to do, and then apply the technology test and figure out what's the right technology for it, not the other way around. We think this is the smarter way of doing it. So a quick example here is, this is an example customer that we've looked at that had existing Exchange environment. I think they have a couple hundred users. They have a 30-person company, that's right. And they use Microsoft Exchange. So what does that typically mean? You buy a server, you buy server software, you've got clients that you're loading the Outlook and calendar software on all these employees, and now you have to maintain the hardware, maintain the software, buy the licenses every year and the maintenance on the licenses, implement and customize it. So what did they do? They took a look and said, we still want Exchange. We're going to grow more people over time. So they started looking at the business decision first, what they wanted to do. We want to stay on that particular application, but we want to do it a different way where we can save money and maybe get some other benefits as well. So they started looking at the stack and saying, we'll do it as software as a service. Exchange now, you can do that through multiple providers where they load it up on a system, and a multi-tenant system, and you just subscribe to it on a per-user basis. And this is what these folks did. And they looked at all the costs involved, of the people involved to take care of the servers and all that, as well as the cost to buy the licenses and the maintenance on the licenses and all that, as opposed to paying per month per person on there. And their per employee costs, you see on the right-hand side there, when they were doing it what we call on-premises, when they owned it all themselves, it was $500 a year per person to have Exchange, to use Exchange. Now, afterwards, it's $150 a year. So they just dropped it by 75% per person by going and using it in the cloud. Same functionality, same end-user response time. When we talked about that, the performance is still there for the customer, for the end user. They just changed the way they did the technology and saved them 75% on this particular thing. And these are some fun charts that talked about what the total costs are over 5 years. You see the big difference between on-premises and cloud-based, and then what the cumulative costs look like. I mean, you cut those cost savings in a third, they're still big. If you said that the cloud-based solution still costs more, it'd still be big savings. And again, you have equal or better functionality for the customer, for the end user. Your IT staff doesn't have to worry about keeping the lights on that server anymore. And as a matter of fact, they don't have to worry about upgrades. Because when you buy hosted Exchange, their service provider, part of your contract is to flow those upgrades through to you in a measured basis so that you don't go down. So these are the kinds of evaluations that we work with customers on to make sure things work right for them. It's not just a checkbox. It's not all or nothing. It really is a bit of a process. Even for smaller businesses, there is a process that you need to go through. Having said all that, the fact remains that there are certain things you can't ignore in your business. Customer service still matters, so you have to take that into account. Cloud does not solve everything, and you have to make sure that you still take care of your customers. Hopefully, the way you implement it enhances the way you do customer service, but you still have to think about that. Service from your service provider still matters. Your data center still matters because, especially for a larger enterprise, you can't get away from owning a data center. You just need to be able to leverage it more. And the network still matters. Think about all we've talked about, moving things out of your data center, off-premise into the cloud. If you don't have a good network connection, it doesn't make it's worthless. So having the right mobile access, having the right network access in your main facilities and the right access in remote facilities really means a lot. So you can't ignore that element of it, which is why the industry is consolidating the way it is. So the cloud computing capabilities come together with network capabilities and make all the difference. So we've assembled a set of cloud-based services inside of CenturyLink over the last several years that we think address a lot of those opportunities that you have. And instead of doing it on a real technical basis, I do it kind of on a user basis. What are the main things you think about every day? You think about communications, security, what kind of applications you're running, and what kind of infrastructure you're running all of that on. We've got a lot of product names out here, but this is just to show you that we've thought through these different elements, and we've got a really nice portfolio, everything from managed hosting of web servers, infrastructure, going into IaaS, to cloud-based contact center software, cloud-based security software, hosted unified communications, content management, email, those kinds of things. We've got a really interesting set of products, and more importantly, we have a good set of people that can help walk you through what those opportunities are and bring you there on a measured basis that leverages the network that you've already got and hopefully brings the benefits of the cloud to you. So any questions? Okay, great. Thanks for your time.